Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Welcome, everyone, to the P.A.S. Report podcast. As your host, Nick Giordano, I am glad you could join me today. Make sure you are following and subscribe to the podcast. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and make sure that you check out the America's Founding series that I just started putting out on Thursdays. This is about the forgotten patriots that aren't talked about in our corrupt public school system, so you can learn about how America is such an extraordinary and exceptional nation. And one of the most important things about this series is you'll realize diversity was there from the start. People that you never heard of, Italians, Polish, blacks, Hispanics, all contributing to America's founding. So you make sure to check it out and share it with others. For today, I have a great guest coming on the program. I have Dr. Mark Young, host of Blunt Force Truth. He is a friend of the show. Mark, always a pleasure to talk to you. Love our conversations. How you doing today?
I am doing great. I love what you were just talking about with that series. A lot of people don't realize that the first person shot in the Revolutionary War was a black man.
It's funny you say that, because that's actually this week's episode going up is going to be about Crispus Attucks.
Absolutely. And who did we borrow money from? A Jewish man to be able to finance. And if I can say this real quick, I believe that during the time of the Revolution, that we were in a divine inspired period, that we saw flawed men of great valor put the country above themselves. And keep in mind that the founding fathers would have been the 1%ers of that day. They would have been the oligarchy that Bernie Sanders complains about. But I believe that it was a spiritual thing. It was a God-inspired thing, that it was a moment in time that changed the world. I think right now, as Americans, we're witnessing that second time. When I see people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and just the incredible group of people that have come together who have literally sacrificed the next 4 years of their life to be able to turn this country around. Elon Musk doesn't need a job. Elon Musk is a fascinating guy because...
But isn't he stealing Social Security numbers to steal people's identity?
He's trying to get in your account, and he's cutting your Social Security. I actually made an offer on X that somebody said he's cutting Social Security, and I said, well, show me, give me the 2 pay stubs of when he cut it, and I'll send you the difference. Just show me what he cut off your Social Security check, and I'll send it to you. Still waiting for a response. Elon Musk,
for a long time.
Exactly. Elon's an interesting guy where he's very hyper-focused, and Elon's big goal is to make humans a multiplanetary species. And he looks at getting to Mars as the backup plan to preserve humanity if the Earth gets destroyed. This is how big his thinking is. So why is he trying to fix the government? Because Elon came to the conclusion that if he doesn't fix the government, he won't get to Mars. So when you think about the thinking, how big the thinking is on this guy, I'm really focused on putting people on another planet. But I'm going to have to make a stop here in D.C. and fix America on my way because it's interfering with my goal. So, that's literally what is happening here. But, a lot of these people, I know a lot of these people. Pete Haig said, Pete took a pay cut, to be Secretary of Defense. How many of these people are literally, McMahon, how many of these people are working for nothing compared to what they could be doing in their real life, including Donald Trump?
I think that's the extraordinary. They don't need it. That's the amazing part. They don't need the power. They could enjoy their lives. They could do whatever they want because they have the money to do it. And yet they're making a sacrifice, not only to serve the country, but what they have to go through, what they have to put up with. Just put out an episode last week about the increase in swatting attacks on right-wing influencers and media pundits from the right. I talked about the Tesla attacks that we're witnessing. And it's not just against Tesla facilities. It's against Tesla drivers.
Tesla drivers.
So, Mark, I have to ask you, How many conservatives drive Teslas? Let's be honest here. Most Teslas are sold in California and New York, and many of these drivers are actually lean to the left, and yet they're being attacked all because they have a car.
Well, I want to surprise you. I have a new Tesla X. So, and I don't drive it. I got to be honest with you. I don't drive the thing. My wife drives it, and it's her third Tesla, and she's a conservative, but she really likes the car, and she likes that she doesn't have to go to gas stations, and what she really likes is the car drives itself. So she gets in the car and gives it an address and starts reading email while the car drives her to wherever she's going.
That would annoy the crap out of me.
The autopilot is quite amazing on that car and much more advanced than anybody else's. But you're right. Elon Musk and Tesla was the darlings of the left. Now, take a look at, here's a guy I love, Kelly, our space astronaut in Congress. So he said that he was getting rid of his hate mobile and getting rid of his Tesla and buying a car made by the American union workers. He went out and bought a full-size Chevy Suburban or a Tahoe. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the green scam in the hierarchy of panics, of existential threats to the planet, is now less than the existential threat of Elon Musk or Donald Trump. So remember, the global cooling, warming, whatever you want to call it this week, was going to be the thing that was going to destroy the planet. But now he can run around in a gas-guzzling Chevy Suburban.
Yeah, it shows you what frauds they are.
It absolutely does.
I mean, come on. You brought up Bernie Sanders before. The guy's a multimillionaire who used to live in someone's basement because he was a communist. Then all of a sudden he gets into the United States Senate. He's got several properties, and he's not the only one. You got people like Michael Moore that constantly bash the idea of capitalism. Yet how wealthy has he become off the capitalist system? These people have always been frauds, have they not?
Absolutely. Elizabeth Warren, you look at... So, Nick, I have a lot of wealthy friends. Most of my friends are very successful, some of them up into the billions. And Bernie yesterday was talking about the oligarchy and how it is driven by greed. Now, I want to tell your audience, I know a lot of wealthy people. I don't know one of them that is driven by greed. And I mean that in all sincerity. We get together in quarterly meetings. And what do we do in our quarterly meetings? We're focused on how we can impact the world. What can we do? How can you take what you do and I take what I do and we create something new that's going to make life better for people? When you look at these businesses, you usually find that cash and profitability is probably the fourth or fifth thing on the list of priorities for most wealthy people. It is transcendence. It is accomplishment. It is creating something new where something didn't exist. And profitability happens to be a requirement to keep it alive. Because if we don't make money, we can't afford to do all the other things. But for people who have money, very rarely is greed the driver. But now when we take a look at people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who have now gone past the old Democratic paradigm was let's twist the truth to have a meaning that will get people riled up. They've completely jumped over let's twist the truth now, and now they're just willing to just flat out create lies. Now there's no shred of truth in what they're saying. So that, as you said at the beginning, Elon Musk is cutting grandma's Social Security check. No one's Social Security check's been cut. No one's check's going to be cut. They're complaining about cutting off 150-year-olds. That's the problem here. There's this little thing called the Hayflick limit, which kind of shows that human DNA can't live past 120 years. That's kind of a really hard science fact.
Well, the Follow the Science crew doesn't really like to follow the science.
The Follow the Science crew believe that there's 80 different genders and that, men can get pregnant. So, I mean, but when you look at these people, what's driving them is a very sick mentality, which is envy. It's not jealousy. Jealousy is Nick's got a Ferrari and I want to have a Ferrari.
And just so the audience knows, Nick does not have a Ferrari.
Envy is Nick has a Ferrari and I know I'll never have a Ferrari, but I don't want Nick to have it. That's socialism. That's Marxism. And that is what you see from the Democrats.
But I have to ask you because, I mean, politics isn't the most complicated thing in the world. I mean, it's a lot of it has to do with common sense, and obviously they lack common sense. But like, wouldn't Democrats be more successful if, let's say, they announced, you know what, we're introducing a bill to cut some of the ridiculous spending that Elon Musk and Doge has pointed out, but we need to save X, Y, and Z programs, and here's why they're important. Or we need to make sure that all criminal illegal aliens are taken out of the United States, but we need to, let's say, look at the DACA folks. Do they have any common sense whatsoever left to try and blunt, or are they just that driven by hatred? Because that's what it seems like. Trump says it, Elon Musk says it, Republicans will say it, and it just, they have to take the opposite position no matter what, no matter how ridiculous they look.
President Trump, during his State of the Union speech, and I'm sure you noticed this, and a lot of other people noticed this.
Oh, he baited them right off at the start.
But a different President Trump showed up. Donald Trump has always been an individual who is looking for approval. So Donald Trump's entire life, did I do well? Did I do well? Tell me I did. Tell me I did something well. And a lot of that, I think, boils down to he was always trying to get his father's approval because his brother was really the golden boy and Donald was the one who really did all the work. And I think he was always trying to get his father's approval.
And the Manhattanist, the elite Manhattan people.
Yep.
He's a Queens guy.
And the Donald Trump that showed up saying, I don't need your approval anymore. This was a different guy that showed up. And he said it right from the beginning. I could give you guys the cure for cancer and you wouldn't applaud for me. The Democrats are at this point, first off, they have spent since the McGovern doctrine forward, they have spent their collective lives focused on elitism. As you know from your own profession, they became the party of the intellectual, of the intelligentsia. We're going to capture education. We're going to capture the schools, the school boards. We're going to capture education and the universities and the media. So one thing I think that you have with these guys, Nick, is they think we're dumb and they think we're smart. And when you listen to them, when you listen to their analysis of why they failed, their analysis tells you a lot because their analysis is, we didn't do a good enough job explaining our policies to the American people. As you and I know, they did a great job explaining their policies to the American people. And that's why they lost, because they explained their policies. But they don't see that. The second thing is they are blinded by hatred for Donald Trump and anyone who supports Donald Trump. And hate is a mental illness. I'm going to bet that you're the same as me. I don't hate Joe Biden. I don't want anything bad to happen to Joe Biden. I just want Joe Biden to go home and don't be in the White House. That's all I ever wanted.
During the Biden era, did we ever see massive attacks on, let's say, a Ben & Jerry's, right? A far-left outfit? Did we see attacks on Starbucks because conservatives were angry at the position Starbucks were taking?
No, that's because Chuck and I used to say this frequently. And we both say the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is we think they're wrong. They want us dead. And that's a little bit like negotiating with terrorists. It's a little bit like, how do you negotiate with people in Iran where you're trying to figure out how to have peace and they're happy to blow themselves up? Well, that's what we're facing here. It's almost like dealing with terrorists. And the other thing, you see all these people on X and they're all rooting for Donald Trump's failure and they can't wait for him to fail. And it's like, okay, you're not getting this. We're all on an airplane together and he's the pilot and you're hoping the has a heart attack, except you're on the plane. So why do you want the pilot to have a heart attack? I thought Trump covered it very well in the debate with Biden. When Trump came out and said, I actually had high hopes that you would be better than I thought and that you would actually be a good president because I didn't really need this. I got to say Biden never disappointed me because he was exactly who I knew he was. But I did hope that he would do some things right. He didn't, but I still always had the hope. Not. But I still had the hopes that he would do some things right. And the other thing, Nick, is I'll bet that you never said, Joe Biden's not my president.
I never said that. In fact, I 99% of the time, I would refer to him as President Biden to show the respect for the office of the presidency.
Absolutely. And I did the same thing. Joe Biden is my president. I'm not happy that he's my president, but he is the president of my country and he is the leader of my country. These people are, Donald Trump is not my president. Okay, well then who is your president? What country do you live in? And America is so terrible, yet 70% of the world's population who is looking to relocate to a different country wants to come here.
Yeah, they never look at that. They never try and understand why that's the case. Instead, they'll sit there and say how racist and horrible America is, yet all these people from all over the world want to get here to the United States because it is the greatest place.
Yeah, you look at racism right now. As we know in economics, everything in economics is kind of varies around what's called supply and demand. And what happens with supply and demand? Well, if demand goes up and supply is not around, then you have to find a way to up supply. Right now, in racism, we have a supply and demand problem. We actually have a demand on the left for more racism than the supply can provide. The country's not racist, and they want more racism. It's bizarre. I think the goal here, the big picture for me, Nick, is the Democrats are very focused on trying to break us into the smallest possible splinter groups so that you have the smallest possible tribe you can have. Your tribe is the one-legged transgender nuns who fear bicycle bars, and that's your group and that's your niche, and everybody else is a horrible person and bad people. So if we can get everybody splintered into these little hate groups where everyone else is an enemy, then guess what? We won't take time to look at who the real enemy, which is in Washington. We won't take the spot to say, wait a minute, we don't actually disagree that much. If we can get people to get past Donald Trump hate, we can see, well, what do we really want? We want good jobs. We want housing. We want good medical care. We want good education for our kids. We want to have safe streets. Normal people want all these things, no matter what side you're on. But now I have to oppose Donald Trump. Even when I know he's right, I have to oppose him because it's Donald Trump. So the Democrats end up looking completely out of touch. There's another thing I'll give you really quick. The Democrats have fallen into essentially Pareto's law. And Pareto's law, for your audience, is the 80-20 rule. So in Pareto's law, we would say, 20% of your employees do 80% of the work and things like that. In this particular version of Pareto's law, the Democrats have decided that they're going to die on the heels of 20% issues. So almost 80% of the country does not want men in women's sports. Almost 80% of the country does not want people illegally crossing the border. And we can go right on down the list. And the most recent polling data on the approval of the Democratic Party has the Democratic Party's approval rating at 23%.
Yeah, it's an all-time low.
Correct. So you see where I'm going? They're in this 80-20 rule where they want to die on the hill of losing issues. These are issues they cannot possibly win. And by the way, my prediction is that the Democrats, if they stay anywhere near the path they're on right now, they will be a minority party for 20 years.
Well, and they should be. When you look at the Democrat Party today, first of all, it's all driven by emotion. There's no reason, there's no logic behind it, behind the positions that they take on the issues. And let's be honest here, they trained several generations to look at emotion and feelings rather than reason and logic. That's part of how we got into this mess. But knowing that it's about emotions and feelings, I agree with the whole 20 years that there'll be a minority party. At the same time, though, I look at the American people, and even before the show, we were talking how Americans don't like to feel uncomfortable. And the reality is that the economy needs to get rid of all the fake money that's been injected into it for years. We've seen tons of dollars just printed and just injected into the markets. And so we don't even know what the real market actually looks like. We allow all these countries to place tariffs on America, but when we put tariffs on them, oh no, we're not allowed to do that. So it's going to take time. And when you're reducing the scale of government, you know this well. A lot of businesses out there, their whole business relies on government grants. Mm-hmm. They are entirely funded by the government. If government is reducing spending, if government is laying off its workforce, that's going to filter out into the broader economy, and things are going to look ugly for a little while. Do Americans have the cojones to see it through, Do they have the cojones to get through the waste, fraud, and abuse, start stripping down a lot of these agencies that have long abused their powers, even if it means that we're going to feel short-term pain?
So this is exactly what happened back in 1980. Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan was the first president that I was old enough to vote for. And Jimmy Carter
He was my first president, period.
Yep. And Jimmy Carter was a train wreck. Now, I think the difference between Jimmy Carter and Joe Biden is Jimmy Carter was a decent human being who made a lot of bad choices. Joe Biden is an evil human being who made a lot of bad choices. That's the difference. Carter was a great ex-president. So Jimmy Carter made a lot of mistakes. The economy was in a horrible spot. Interest rates were up. Home mortgages at that time sometimes reached as much as 20%. And my family was in the construction business. We had a front row seat to how bad that was. When Reagan took over, the first year of his presidency was brutal because he was cutting spending and he was getting all this money out of the economy and he was having to, do the things it takes to bring interest rates back down. So there was an enormous amount of buyer remorse on people who voted for Ronald Reagan. The second year forward was what is now historically referred to as the go-go 80s, or the greed is good decade, because the rest of the decade was amazing. And again, you won't be old enough to remember this, but when Ronald Reagan ran for re-election, he ran a very famous campaign, which was called the Rose Garden campaign, because he didn't campaign. He didn't do anything. He'd give a few speeches from the Rose Garden and a debate or something, and he did nothing else. And he swept 49 of 50 states?
Only Minnesota.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we're facing. Now, to your point, America has now fallen into this aggressive pursuit of comfort. We aggressively pursued comfort. When I was a kid, we didn't have air conditioners in school. When you went to school in the summertime, if you were still in school before the summer break happened and it was 90 degrees outside, then you had a 90-degree classroom. You didn't have air conditioning.
I just have to say, I have to bring this up because in September we had a heat wave at my college in New York, and literally they shut down the building and sent us over to another building that had air conditioning because it was too hot. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Listen, it's the worst for the professor because we're standing up there. I got a suit on.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's doing a lot of the talking and writing on the board and everything. So, and yet I'm just like, oh my goodness, like this is how soft we've grown. I mean, most kids today haven't even drank out of a garden hose.
No, they shut the schools down when there's 2 inches of snow. Because it's a snow day. It's like a snow day. That's not a snow day.
Every kid has their water bottle. They don't drink out of water fountains.
Right. You got to have a water bottle. Everybody's got to have a carabiner with hand sanitizer hanging off their backpack. Think about this. Every parent is out there driving the kid to school now instead of walk to school or get on a bus because they're too delicate. Well, we're making these kids delicate. You get them in your class. You get these kids that are literally hothouse plants by the time you get them. But the entire nation's doing this. We're doing this aggressive pursuit of comfort. Oh, my goodness, it's 2 degrees too warm in here. I can't function like this. It's 2 degrees too cold. As you and I talked off air, if you're outside and it's cold out and it is not so cold that you are getting frostbite or damaging your skin, then nothing's wrong. You're just uncomfortable. And guess what? They talk about, and this is something that I've always had fun with some of my other doctor friends, and that is we talk about, oh my God, it is a heat wave going on in Chicago. We need to get the senior citizens into shelters where there's air conditioning. Guess what? Grandma needs to be tossed out in the heat, and then she needs to be exposed to some cold. Why? Because that's how our bodies function. There are things in your body which are called heat shock proteins that are only activated when you're exposed to heat. There are things in your body called cold shock proteins that are only activated when you're exposed to cold. Guess what? Your body needs to discharge static electricity. How do you do that? You come in contact with the earth. Think about how people could go years and never touch the planet now. because I'm never going to touch the ground. I'm not going to get dirty. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to wear my, my fancy shoes with rubber soles on them. And we have to stop doing this. We have to be willing to get dirty.
Well, I have to ask you, do you think like this is the natural evolution of societies? I mean, you're someone that looks at history. You look at every single empire. It seems every empire hits this wall and then you just go backwards. And it appears that's where we're at today.
I had a guest on my show, and I should connect you with him. He is a historian on Roman history, and a very fascinating guest. His name is Jeremy Slate, and he was pointing out amazing similarities to the Roman Empire, to the United States. And some of the things that he pointed out was Rome actually went through mass immigration, and they went through printing money. And the way they printed money was they started throwing base metals in with the gold and silver. That was their way of printing more money, throw garbage metal into it. And a lot of things were very similar. But even look at where we've gone with things like UFC and wrestling, and then compare that to, some of the stuff in the Coliseum. We're not chopping people's heads off, but you can you can go to a UFC fight and see somebody break somebody's arm or yank it out of the socket in the middle of a fight, which we didn't used to do. Evolution, I guess, getting back to your question on evolution tends to move slowly. The problem we're having right now is our technology is moving infinitely faster than our bodies can evolve to adapt to it. So the technology is overriding our evolution. Our bodies were not designed for what we're asking of them right now. And this is why you see this, you probably have students who can't get through a class without staring at their phone.
It's so frustrating having to compete with my students' attention between the phone and me.
Right. The phone is actually become an addiction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, I always say, when I first started teaching, way back in January of 2006, I would walk into the classroom and everyone would be chatting, and I would have to be like, shut up, guys, I got to take attendance here. You got to quiet it down. Today, I walk into the classroom, dead silence, the lights aren't even on, and all you see is the glow of their phone reflecting off their faces. They're not communicating with each other. They're not interacting with each other. They're not doing the things that college students are supposed to be doing, making friends and building their networks. It's so sad to watch.
From sociology, we know right now that this is the time in history when humans have the greatest connection to other humans due to technology, and they have the least number of real friends. I mean, this is absolute research and polling data. People have the least real friends they have today. So I have this joke comment that I use that I refer to people as dead hooker friends. And my explanation of the dead hooker friends is, who can you call 3 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, Nick, I've got a dead hooker in my trunk. And the only thing that Nick says is, well, where are you at and what do you need me to bring? Now, I'm not encouraging Nick to become part of...
So I got 3 of them and 2 brothers that will help out in that situation.
I've got to tell you, I've asked that question to a lot of people and almost brought tears to their eyes when they realized they had none. And the reason I don't use money as the measurement, I could say, who could you call 2 in the morning and say, I need $10,000? The reason I don't use that as the measurement is because $10,000 for one person's a life savings and $10,000 for another person is pocket change. So you can't use money as that balancer, right, like that. But you think about it. How many people do you know who don't have those friendships? They don't have the friendship of, I had something horrible just happen and I need some help at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's no one for them to call. We're becoming isolated. Humans are becoming isolated. You're seeing it in your classroom, and you've got humans sitting next to you, and you're staring into a little screen when there's a human next to you.
I think the scariest aspect was the coronavirus. I mean, if I was growing up, if we moved this back to the 1990s in high school, the principals and deans would have quit. They wouldn't have been able to get us to put on masks and social distance or anything like that. What's terrifying is that this generation just did what they were told. They just obeyed and complied, didn't push back, didn't rise up. The government they were more upset at Congress trying to ban TikTok than they were about having 2 years of their lives stolen from them.
This is research that we've been watching for about the past 15 years. And what we're seeing when we look at these generations, we go from greatest gen to baby boomers to Xers to millennials to, Gen Y to Gen Alpha. We run through these. And as we look at these sectors, we see big behavioral differences. And one of the big behavioral differences is willingness to comply with authority. Each generation has become more willing to comply with authority. And that's where we're at right now, where we literally have these people that will say, oh, I'm supposed to stand 6 feet away from each other. Now, as you and I know, there was never any science behind the 6-foot gap. But what did the 6-foot gap do? The 6-foot gap took your neighbor in the grocery store and made your neighbor a potential enemy. He's going down the aisle the wrong way. He's going to pass me with this cart. He's trying to kill me. Can't he see the arrows on the floor? Because, by the way, when I went to the grocery store, the arrows on the 6-foot loop and they go down the aisle this way, it was meaningless to me.
It was idiotic. But then again, you had Emperor Cuomo in New York stating to little kids, you don't want to kill grandma and grandpa. Meanwhile, he was the one that killed mostly grandma and grandpa. But he would basically say it. And, imagine doing that to a little kid, thinking like if something happens to their grandparents, they're the ones that killed them. It's kind of sick and twisted when you really think about it.
Yeah, it turned neighbor against neighbor. That's what the 6-foot thing did, and the walk up and down the aisle thing. It turned neighbors against neighbors. You're getting too close to me. All right, well, then move if you don't like it. The reason I didn't care about, if you want to wear a mask, that's fine. If you want to walk up and down the aisles, go whatever direction you want. My view is this. And this is why I don't practice psychology, Nick, because I'm like the least empathetic psychologist that was ever created.
I think that's why we get along so well.
And my position is, you are perfectly allowed to have whatever mental psychosis that you care to nurture and keep. So if you want to dress up as a kitten, or if you all of a sudden are a man and you want to think you're a woman, knock yourself out, get a skirt, do whatever you want to do. I have no obligation to participate in your psychosis. That's not how America is built. America is built on individual. The individual freedom is first. I have the right to not be a part of your mental disorder. So if you want to run around as a woman, you want to run up and down the aisles, you want to stand 6 feet away, you want to wear a mask, do whatever you want to do. Just, I don't care, wear all the mask you want. Don't bother me with it, because your rights end where my nose starts. And that's America. I mean, think about, we were trying to prevent natural immunity. We were trying to block it. When we look at, we covered this on Blunt Force Truth in May of 2020. May of 2020, we did a show where we told people where the coronavirus came from, how it got there, how it was made at Wuhan, because we had people on the inside who are friends of mine. And we explained to people that here's the issue with the vaccine. It is the nature of viruses to survive. Viruses, that's their whole goal. They want to survive. When a virus becomes deadly, the virus quickly mutates into a lesser deadly, more virulent virus. Because the virus knows if I kill the host, I die with it. So the virus becomes a cold and it becomes more contagious, which means it needs to go through the population. And we explained to people then, this virus will mutate into yes, there'll be some people that will die, but it will mutate into a head cold and mutate into a more virulent, less deadly virus faster than technology will ever be able to make a vaccine. And that is exactly what happened.
Exactly. And yet you had the left use it for political purposes. I mean, don't forget, several states, they wanted to turn the population, as you said, neighbor against neighbor, make it Saddam Hussein's Iraq, where neighbors rat each other out and call the cops on each other if there's too many people in the home or if someone's not wearing their mask. It was really, really frightening. And to see the obedience and compliance is frightening. And if we look at it, I'm glad Trump won. Obviously, I supported him in this election over Kamala Harris. That wasn't a difficult decision at all to make. I'm glad he won. I'm glad Republicans are in control of the House, no matter how slim the margin is. I'm glad they're in control of the Senate. But the fact remains, you still had tens of millions of people vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, she still got, 74, 75 million votes.
Frightening.
Well, what does it say about America?
Well, it's interesting because, as you know, history, The Founding Fathers never created America to be unified.
No, division was embedded right from the start. I mean, there were people that wanted to make up with the King of England. There were people that wanted to fight a revolution. The Constitutional Convention, people wanted to revive the Articles of Confederation. People said it's beyond repair. We got to create a new constitution. We see this division. You want unity, go to North Korea.
Yeah, I have some friends that were staying with us for the weekend, and my friend said, well, what do we have to do to unite America? And I'm like, why would we unite America? America was never made to be united. The Founding Fathers knew that the more opposition we had, the less stupid things people could get accomplished. And to your point, Cuba's got unity, North Korea's got unity, and look what unity gets you. If you want to see other examples of unity right here, just look at any major city that has 60 years of democratic rule. What does that city look like? What does New York look like right now where you're at? What does L.A. look like? What does Detroit look like?
It's Chicago. Over 100 years of Democrat rule.
So anytime that you see one party, anytime you see one party that dominates everything, you do tend to have problems. We knew that. The Founding Fathers knew that. So it was made to not be unified. It is disturbing that so many people voted for Kamala Harris, but here's the good part of it. The good part of it is 38% of the people that voted for Kamala Harris was an actual vote against Donald Trump. And I say that's a good thing only in as much as in our next election, we won't be reelecting Donald Trump. We'll be electing someone who no one in the country has his polarized numbers or his polarized nature. So even though there's people who will hate, let's say J.D. Vance runs, there's people who will hate J.D. Vance, they're never going to hate J.D. Vance at the level they hate Donald Trump. And we saw that when J.D. Vance debated Tim Walz. J.D. Vance did a much kinder, softer, and politer defense of the Trump agenda than Trump does. Trump is unique. Trump is who he is. But didn't Brett Hume kind of say it all at the end of the speech of the State of the Union address? And Brett Hume's a smart guy. He can be a little irritating once in a while, but he's a very wise person, has been around for a long time. And his comment was, if anyone has ever doubted that Donald Trump is the political colossus of our time, this speech should end that confusion. He's an anomaly. He is an anomaly. He is a unique human being, as Elon Musk is a unique human being. I don't know. What do you think? I don't think that we will see another Donald Trump in our lifetime.
No, you won't. I mean, it's just, and again, you have people that think, well, if I just out-Trump Trump, I'm going to win, and then they always lose. They actually look 10 times worse, and it's because Donald Trump is a unique character in American life now, and he is someone that could buck the normal political trends that have been going on for decades, where other politicians can't do that. And so I think you're right. I think he is unique. I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunity that exists when you have someone like Trump, because he's not held to the political standards that others are held to. But that's what I find extraordinary, because let's be honest here. With Donald Trump, everything is negotiable, right? And so Democrats have this hatred towards him, yet they could actually work with Trump. Like when Mike Pence was vice president, let's just say something happened to Trump and Pence became president. Pence is a hardcore conservative. There are many issues that he is not going to be budging on because of his conservative ideology, where Donald Trump is not beholden to any particular political ideology. But Democrats have chosen, rather than negotiate, we're going to have this irrational hatred. Even though we could get maybe 40, 50, 60% of what we want, we're going to forego it all because we hate Orange Man.
And when we look at young people that you deal with, and we look at some of the protests on college campuses, and we see we literally have students that are out campaigning for terrorists on college campuses. Here's what I think is happening. And I think when you talk about who voted for Kamala Harris, and I think when you see these students, we get back to that aggressive pursuit of comfort. Life has become too easy in America. And life has become so easy in America that it triggers a part of the human brain. And it triggers that amygdala, that old lizard brain that we have. And that old part of our brain does what? It's hardwired to look for the danger. Our brains are hardwired to seek danger. And
isn't that why the news, like the first 10 minutes of the news is always like the worst things that are happening in society as opposed to the feel-good stories?
right, there is no such thing as the good news channel, because when you look at the way the hierarchy is of your brain, the amygdala has priority. And the reason it has priority is because it's there to keep you safe. So it's the part of the brain that could hear a twig snap and know that it's a saber-toothed tiger. And it's the part of the brain that could quickly identify the difference between a snake and a stick on the path in front of you. So that part of the brain has the hierarchy. And I'll give you one other example. When you go to the movies and you're watching the slasher movie, and the girl's walking down the stairs into the basement, and you're saying, don't go in the basement, don't go in the basement, don't do it. Why are you going in the basement?
You're an idiot.
And the guy whips a chainsaw out and, starts hacking her to pieces. And what do you see people do in the movie? They shock, right? Their body jumps, they spill some popcorn. The reason is because that old part of the brain, that old amygdala, doesn't have the ability to tell the difference between fantasy and reality. So that part of your brain sees that movie on a screen, and that old part of your brain takes that as a threat. So it increases adrenaline, it focuses your vision, it ups your heart rate, it does all these things. And movie makers know that, but politicians know this, and news people know this. In reality, when I show you, remember last year we had the submarine that was lost underwater, and the news media went on a 24/7 binge to Where's the Submarine for a week?
Yes.
Tragic story, sad story, right?
Of course.
Were you going to go rescue the submarine? Was there anything Nick Giordano could do to help that submarine?
No.
Was there anybody on that submarine that was going to impact your life?
No.
But people were riveted to it for a week. Why? Because that old part of our brain locks us in.
Well, when you look at the part of our brain, I have to ask, when we view the past, we tend to view it through a nostalgic lens. Like, things were much better. Our politicians were more dignified. I constantly hear that. We had a better press back then. But the truth is, when you look at our history, the politicians weren't more dignified. I mean, for God's sakes, you had Alexander Hamilton die in a duel with Burr. You had the Jackson Adams. You had Senator Sumner almost beaten to death on the Senate floor. And when you look at the press, well, we had this small period of the press where it seemed to be a little bit dignified, but the truth is, the Founding Fathers owned newspapers and would clobber each other in their papers. They were constantly berating each other in the newspapers, and the newspapers put out a lot of propaganda. We have to be honest about that. So do you think when you talk about the brain and how we go towards violence, do you think that's the same thing when we look at quote-unquote division today and then think our past was so nostalgic that it was always better?
So a couple of things. One, John Adams actually put out pamphlets that said if you voted for Jefferson, your women and children would be raped in the streets. That was an ad. That was an ad that John Adams put out.
That's like today's Democrats.
And Jefferson put out an ad that said that John Adams was secretly a woman. So you're right. The world, so first off, let me say this. The world has never been safer than it is today, correct? This is the safest. You look at thousands of history, the years of history, the world has never been safer than it is today.
Well, I'd argue on the Biden, it was growing dangerously unstable, but
if we look at a history of thousands of years,
yes,
it has never been safer. But how do humans use memory? So when the brain does memory, I want you to think for a minute. Imagine, folks, you're holding up a film strip. And when you hold up a film strip, there's 24 frames in every second in the film strip. And the film goes by very quickly, and that's what gives the illusion of moving pictures. When our brain recalls a memory, we actually recall it as a film strip, and we don't run the film. We actually edit single shots out of it. So think about it.
I will give you a real-world example right now. So when it comes to our children, okay, we tend to remember all the good times when they were babies and infants and toddlers, and we forget about how difficult it really was. And then when the spouse says, I want to have another kid, remember how cute they were. And I'm like, yeah, you remember how I remember how annoying they could be.
So what happens is we edit stills out of the 24 frame film strip. And I grab a couple stills here and a couple over here and a couple over here, and I resplice them together in my mind. But I resplice them together in my mind with all of my own cognitive biases for what I want it to be. So memories are not accurate. Actually, scientifically, we know the only way to preserve a memory is to never recall it. Because every time you recall a memory, you edit it. So now we're editing memories of the past. And think about it. How many people do you know who always talk about the good old days? No, they weren't the good old days. They were not the good old days. I mean, remember you won't remember, but I'm sure you've seen it, where we had the Goldwater election, where we had a television commercial of a little kid standing on a beach and a nuclear bomb going off behind her and dissolving her. I mean, that was not romantic video, but it was how we scared people in politics. Back then, we were scaring people saying, if you elect this guy, he's gonna launch nuclear war and you're all gonna get vaporized. It's like when I was a kid, we used to have nuclear fallout training, and they would have all of us get under our desk and put your hands down your knees, your hands over your head under a desk.
I encourage everyone to watch Bert the Turtle.
And I remember as a child, because I was a very odd child, and I remember as a child asking a teacher, will nuclear bombs not affect a desk? Is a desk nuclear proof?
Well, I mean, think about it logically. With the coronavirus, you walk into a restaurant and you got to wear your mask. But when you sit at the table, a shield comes around you that the coronavirus cannot penetrate. But if you get up, you have to put back on the mask because now the coronavirus could get you. So it's the same
or you had
logic.
a sheet of plastic at the cash register.
Yeah, so the same logic we see was used decades ago, and that's a great point. Mark, I always enjoy our conversations. Everyone needs to check out Blunt Force Truth. Visit the P.A.S. Report website, PASreport.com. I'll have links up to Blunt Force Truth there. And make sure to check out the America's Founding series releasing on Thursday. You're sure to enjoy it. You'll learn about a lot of the forgotten patriots that nobody really talks about. Mark, always a pleasure to have you on.
Same, buddy. I really appreciate it. And folks, we're looking forward to having Professor Giordano on Blunt Force Truth. So listen for that, and he'll be a guest on our show.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to that, and I'll put the episode out on my end as well.
Thanks a lot. Great being here, Nick.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.